Hello my friends, it has been about 2 years since the A7 III was introduced, which means that it is a time for my second annual update video. To be honest, not that much has changed in this class of camera since I have made the first annual update. The whole innovation process may also slow down a little bit due to the current situation, so much like with the GH5, it seems like the A7 III will be a very valid camera in foreseeable future. I used the A7 III a lot over the past 2 years, I took it to many beautiful places, and in this video I will try to help you decide whether it is the right choice in 2020. There are basically 5 reasons why the A7 III is so successful. Those are the sensor, autofocus system, compact size, battery life, and the lens selection. In-body image stabilization and 2 SD card slots are also worth mentioning. It was and arguably still is the only complete full-frame hybrid camera with no major weaknesses. My A7 III still looks the same as a year ago. The only visible imperfection is the marking above the A7 III badge caused by the cage. Other than that, it looks very good. Every time I pick up the A7 III after using Panasonic S1 or even the GH5, I am still impressed by its compact size. It is tiny for what it does. I travel a lot and I usually have to bring a lot of equipment for testing, so I always appreciate small and lightweight equipment. Some may argue that it doesn't matter because the lenses are big and heavy. Looking at this 24mm f1.4 GM or even 28 to 75mm Tamron, I don't think so. There is plenty of small and lightweight lenses for the E-mount. Thanks to that size and weight, I can also use smaller gimbal, tripod and slider. Compact size is a huge advantage for me personally, and I am glad that it continues to be a priority for Sony. Continuing with the things that I like, I have to mention the sensor of course. IMX410 was basically released together with the A7 III, so it is still a very new sensor and it is great. The dynamic range and low light capabilities are outstanding. I have talked a lot about that in the past. It gives you a ton of flexibility for editing, especially in challenging HDR situations such as sunsets. You can use it up to ISO 12800 with low amount of quite naturally looking noise. Importantly, it can also get the colors right even at high ISO. 24 megapixels is still more than enough for me. I've been thinking about getting high resolution camera just for stills, but realistically, I have no publishing options that would make 61 megapixels beneficial, so 24 megapixels or 6K is more than good enough for me. The only limitation of this sensor is that it can't do full sensor readout at 60 frames per second, which means that cameras equipped with this sensor can't shoot 4K 60p. Other than that, it is a great sensor, and I won't be surprised if we see it in one more generation. Regarding the colors, as I've previously explained, bad Sony colors are long gone. A7 III and newer Sony cameras are some of the best when it comes to color reproduction, together with Fuji X-Trans 4 cameras. In the past year, I started to use unedited picture profile of pictures and videos a lot more. These just look really nice. I also like Sony's automatic white balance the most. If I want to edit videos in post, I still use Picture Profile 8 and Gamma Change to Cine 4. Together with Fuji's Eterna, this is my most favorite semi-flat picture style. S-Log is not that great though, I don't use it at all to be honest. By now it is well known that A7 III has excellent autofocus. The performance in both stills and video is flawless, so I won't talk much about that. One thing about this system that is not that great is the selection of autofocus areas. You can basically choose between single point, preset zones, and full sensor. That is sufficient for majority of situations, but I would like to see more options such as custom areas, custom size autofocus points, and so on. On the other hand, I really like the speed and sensitivity settings. There are just 2 track sense and 3 drive speed settings. Those are very easy to understand and they make big difference, so big thumbs up for these. I have the track sense set to responsive and the drive speeds to normal most of the time, and it works great. A7 III can also shoot 10 frames per second with autofocus continuous and automatic exposure, which makes it very good sports camera in combination with that autofocus system. Overall, the autofocus on A7 III is excellent. I have no complaints at all when it comes to autofocus. In the past couple of months, I have also changed my opinion about the in-body image stabilization a lot, and now I think that it might be the most underrated feature of the A7 III. Of course, it is not as good as on the S1, but at this size, having in-body image stabilization with full frame sensor at all is a huge win. I have taken some handheld static shots with Viltrox's 85mm f1.4 lens, and surprisingly, these were more than usable with just tiny bit of warp stabilizer. At 24mm, basically everything except for walking looks acceptable. It also helps a lot with gimbal. A7 III in-body image stabilization is actually very good at neutralizing small shaking, and the gimbal can take care of larger movements, so that works great. Regarding the video, of course, it still shoots beautiful video. It is downsampled full sensor readout 4K with a tons of detail. A7 III has a low pass filter, which makes it look a bit more natural, and it gets rid of the moire. Of course, there is no 4K 60p. At the moment, we are still waiting for the perfect implementation of 4K 60p in full-frame hybrid camera. There is no 10-bit recording either. There are full-frame cameras that can do that, and I would definitely like to see it on Sony full-frame camera as soon as possible. One more myth about Sony cameras is poor quality of 1080p video. Sony is just much more conservative with sharpening in default picture profile offsetting. I much prefer it that way over the oversharpened video from some other brands. The amount of actual detail is very good for 1080p video. On the other hand, the Super 35 or APS-C mode is not that great. It will still give you full resolution 4K video, which is useful if you are using APS-C lenses or if you want to zoom in. Unfortunately, the decrease of image quality in this mode is very significant. For me, it is an emergency option, not something that I would use deliberately. A7 III is still suitable for a lot of projects, and I've personally never had major issues with 8-bit files. I still recommend the A7 III for any kind of YouTube stuff, travel videos, news gathering, and so on. The overall success of A7 III is closely related to one particular lens, which is the Tamron 28-75mm f2.8 Di3RXD. It was basically released alongside the A7 III, and it made it possible to get proper f2.8 full-frame experience under $3,000. It has great optical qualities and it is compact, so it is a great match for Sony A7 III. The autofocus on this lens is also as good as with any new Sony lens. Basically, the only two negatives of this lens are missing 4mm on the wide end, and the rendition of the bokeh in complicated scenes might not be to everyone's taste. It definitely has much more advantages than disadvantages, so I still highly recommend Tamron 28-75. In the past year, I have also tried the 17-28mm version, and it is optically a very good lens, but I missed that 28-35mm range. It wasn't versatile enough for me, but if you are okay with that focal range, I can still recommend it. 70-180mm f2.8 version will also be available soon. Unfortunately, the European price increase is unacceptable and I would probably miss the optical image stabilization, so I will not be getting that one. I also bought the FE 24mm f1.4 GM in June, and that is currently my most favorite lens in the world. It combines wide angle and very wide aperture, and it provides unique look. Optically, it is as good as it gets. It is extremely sharp right from f1.4, and it has great optical character. Especially the rendering of autofocus background is beautiful. I use this lens whenever I can, just because I like that look so much. A big surprise for me was Viltrox's 85mm f1.8. As we later found out, Tokina has a lot to do with this lens, since they sell identical lens under their brand as well. That probably explains why it is so good. This is optically great lens as well, it has very nice optical character and rendition of bokeh. I use this lens a lot and I recommend it as well. Regarding the handling, that is always a compromise between the size and the number of control elements that you can put on the camera. The only two things that I miss on the A7 III are the drive mode dial and focus mode switch. I am used to A7 III handling and I can say that I like it a lot. All of the buttons are logically placed, it has joystick, exposure compensation dial, and well-positioned C1 and C2 custom buttons. The grip is also sufficiently large for a majority of users, and again, a good compromise between the size and handling. And now let's take a look at some stuff that I don't like that much. A lot has been said about the menu system, which is not great of course, but fortunately I was able to find my ways around it. I actually rarely use main menu besides the My menu, where I put all of the items that I usually need to use. Function menu is also customizable and I use that for a majority of settings that are not assigned to custom buttons. I also miss the touch support in menu a lot. I'm not saying that the menu system is good, but it generally won't bother you on a daily basis. Sony has managed to offer the A7 III for $2,000 at the launch, but to do that, they had to spare some cost. And they chose the viewfinder and the display to do so. Both are fine to use, the viewfinder has 2.69 million dots, and the display has just about 1 million dots. I still think that the display and viewfinder were acceptable cost-saving areas. I can see the difference when switching from high-resolution devices, but I can live with that. I also have two practical issues with the A7 III. The first one is that it is not possible to see display information on external monitor if you shoot 4K. The display will also go black when you start recording with the external display. The second issue is that it disables image stabilization when the remote control is connected. That means that you can't use in-body image stabilization and gimbal controls at the same time, which is quite annoying. On the other hand, the battery life is great. It can realistically shoot over 1000 shots on full charge or 3 hours of 4K video. That is still by far the best battery life out of any mirrorless camera at the market. About a year ago, I also got myself this Nightcore smart charger for two NP F100Z batteries, and this is the best charger that I've ever used. I will leave a link to that in the description. I have recently made a video about my top 10 photography and filmmaking investments, and I have actually included the A7 III on this list. I am not a professional content creator, but I can say that the A7 III has definitely paid for itself. It is still one of very few hybrid cameras with combination of those 5 things that made it such a good package 2 years ago. Due to current situation, we will probably see even less new cameras introduced, and the A7 III will be a very relevant camera in upcoming years. It is definitely not perfect. The viewfinder and the display are not great, but not terrible. The menu system may actually be terrible, but I don't need to use it, and there are those two smaller issues that I've talked about. Apart of that, there isn't really anything that I could complain about. The image quality and the autofocus are excellent, the colors are great, and even the in-body image stabilization is pretty good, all things considered. I also have to mention the E-mount lens selection, which is still the best amongst mirrorless cameras. There are better video cameras with smaller sensors, but if you want hybrid camera and full frame, which has its appeal, the A7 III is still the one to get. I've had it for 2 years, but if I was buying hybrid full frame camera today, it would still be the A7 III. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share opinion, please do so in the comment section. Stay safe and see you next time.